Good morning, and thank you. And thank you, Ambassador Massinga, for that very warm welcome. It is a privilege to be here in Ethiopia. Over the last few days, I have had the opportunity to spend time in Addis and travel to the Afar and Tigray regions. My visit reflects the deep U.S. commitment to the people of Ethiopia. This commitment includes the emergency food assistance USAID has been providing across the country. Since resuming food assistance at the end of last year, the United States and our partners have distributed food to 2.4 million people in January alone. In Afar, I visited a food distribution center in Berhala. There, USAID, WFP, and the community are working together to identify the most vulnerable people to ensure we are prioritizing reaching those most in need. I saw firsthand how we are using QR codes created for each household to help families receive the right amount of food to reflect the size of the family. In Tigray, I went to Abergele, one of the most conflict and drought affected areas in the region. While there, I visited a site run by Food for the Hungry and Catholic Relief Services as part of the Joint Emergency Operation Program. They have now completed 4 distributions of food to community members since December. Also in Tigray, I visited a hospital serving children and mothers in the community. In just 6 months, this facility provided life-saving emergency nutrition services to more than 3,000 severely malnourished children with USAID and goal support. I'm grateful for the heroic work of the humanitarian workers and medical staff I met, and those working all across the country. I appreciate the efforts of WFP and the JOP to provide assistance to those most in need, as well as their efforts to implement the reforms to the distribution of food to make sure it is reaching the most vulnerable that it is intended for. During my visit, I saw with my own eyes and with my own heart the critical need facing these communities in the face of drought and as they seek to recover from years of conflict. I heard from humanitarian colleagues about the continued challenges they face in reaching all areas of the country as conflict continues. Despite the difference that USAID and our partners are making, more must be done. That is why today I'm announcing more than $80 million in additional humanitarian assistance from the American people to help those affected by the humanitarian crisis here in Ethiopia. This funding will support our trusted humanitarian partners already providing critical aid to the most vulnerable communities. It will help fund agricultural inputs like access to seeds that grow nutritious foods. And we will continue our support for gender-based violence prevention and response services. With this funding, we will treat and prevent acute forms of malnutrition for more than 1.5 million children under 5 years of age, and help more than 600,000 pregnant and nursing mothers this year. This is absolutely vital given the significant nutrition needs I witnessed on this trip, where I heard mothers struggling to feed their children and themselves. Additionally, USAID continues to focus on food security, health, and other programs. Through our overall efforts, we are working to reach at least 4.5 million people across 8 regions of Ethiopia. We know that humanitarian needs in Ethiopia remain staggering because of the compounding effects of conflict, insecurity, drought, and flooding. The United States remains committed to delivering life-saving aid to all those in need across Ethiopia. But given the scale of the needs, we can't do this alone. And as the largest bilateral donor of humanitarian assistance, we continue to call on others to join us in delivering desperately needed aid to help save lives. And with that, we'll now turn to some questions with Ambassador Massinga. Thank you. Thank you for those questions. On the issue of FuseNet and the IPC classifications, yes, IPC4 is a very indicates an extreme and severe food insecurity. And yes, if conditions worsen or food aid can't get to where it is needed most, things could worsen, and there's always a chance and a risk of famine. At the moment, the data is not available, but the key point here is that the needs are staggering severe and immense, and I am convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that we need to do more, and that there needs to be urgent action, which is why we are calling on all of our partners to increase funding and support Ethiopia on the food insecurity. And this extends to all parts of Ethiopia. There is extreme food insecurity in different parts of Ethiopia, and we all need to acknowledge it and address it, regardless of what the data labeling says at the moment, which, I will leave it to the experts to make those determinations on, whether something has hit that threshold or not. But at the moment, we don't have the data, so I don't know. On the question of IPC classification, the IPC is a rigorous methodology. We'd like to see that come back to Ethiopia. There is another methodology that is being used here, which the community is relying on, but most certainly our teams have been in discussions on that as well, and we would like to see that come back. On your question of diversion, it's important to note that our teams discovered diversion that was widespread, systematic, and coordinated. And what it meant was that people who are the most vulnerable in those classifications, as you were talking about, in the most food insecure communities, were not getting what was intended for them. So the decision by the U.S. government to pause this assistance was gut-wrenching. Even more so that I saw it with my own eyes, how difficult conditions are for people. But what is important to note is that we restarted assistance in December with multiple reforms to create accountability around the assistance, make sure that it is reaching the people that is most in need, and all other programs that USAID supported continued, including nutrition programs and treatment for malnutrition for the most vulnerable children. All of that continued while we were in the process of addressing this. And so since we've restarted assistance, we've reached more than 2.4 million people. We feel confident about the reforms, noting, however, we need to stay vigilant to make sure there's no backsliding.